All right, let's dive into a world that's completely invisible to the naked eye, but it is absolutely everywhere. I'm talking about on your skin right now, inside your body, and in the very air you're breathing. This is the amazing hidden universe of microbiology.
So to get us started, let me ask you a question. When you think about all the life on planet Earth, what pops into your head? You probably picture giant trees, maybe elephants, lions, or even swarms of insects, right? But what if I told you the most common organisms on the planet aren't any of those things?
The answer, it turns out, is microbes. These tiny, mostly single-celled organisms outnumber every other form of life combined. It's not even close. They're in the deepest oceans, the driest deserts, and they were running this planet for billions of years before we ever showed up.
So how in the world do we even start to make sense of this vast, invisible world? Well, that's where we step into what I like to call the microverse and really get down to what microbiology is all about.
At its heart, microbiology is simply the study of all these microscopic living things. We're talking bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, the whole gang. Now, I know what you're thinking. When we hear words like bacteria or virus, our brain immediately jumps to sickness and disease. But the truth is, the vast, vast majority of these little guys are not only harmless, they are absolutely essential for all life on Earth, including ours.
And I mean, just look at how much they do for us. Right now, inside your gut, there's an entire community of microbes helping you digest your last meal. Out in the soil, they're pulling nitrogen out of the air so plants can grow. They help cows and other animals break down tough grass. We've even figured out how to use them to make everything from delicious cheese to life-saving medicines. They are, without a doubt, the planet's tiny, unsung heroes.
Okay, so if there are literally trillions upon trillions of these microbes all over the place, how on earth do scientists keep track of them all? I mean, how do you organize a world you can't even see? It sounds like chaos, right? Well, let's see how they do it.
Scientists use this really clever system called the hierarchy of classification. The best way to think about it is like a set of those Russian nesting dolls. You start with the biggest, most general doll on the outside, that's the domain, and you keep opening them up to get more and more specific, all the way down to the tiniest doll, the species. And guess what? Every living thing, you and me included, fits somewhere on this ladder.
Now, trying to remember domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, yeah, that's a total mouthful. So here's a little trick to help you out, a mnemonic. Dina's kids prefer candy over fried green spinach. Trust me, it's a super easy way to keep that order straight in your head.
So let's talk about that top level, domain. It's pretty incredible, but all life on this planet fits into just 3 domains. You've got bacteria and archaea, which are both simple cells called prokaryotes. And then there's eukarya, that's us, and plants and fungi. And we're all made of more complex cells called eukaryotes. This is basically the biggest, most fundamental split in all of biology.
So what's the big difference between these two groups? Honestly, it just comes down to organization. Prokaryotes are really simple. Think of them like a one-room studio apartment. Everything's just kind of floating around inside. But eukaryotic cells, like ours, they're like a giant mansion with a special room for everything, a nucleus to keep the DNA safe, and all sorts of other compartments for different jobs.
All right, now that we've got the big picture view, let's zoom way in. For the rest of this explainer, we're going to focus on the most famous, or maybe infamous, members of the microverse. Let's get to know the main character of our story, bacteria.
So first things first, how do you name a bacterium? Well, scientists use a 2-name system called binomial nomenclature, which is just a fancy way of saying it has a first and a last name. The first name is the genus, and the second is the species. So for our example today, let's look at a really common one called Staphylococcus aureus.
And here's the really cool part. These names are almost never random. They're like really descriptive puzzles. If you break down Staphylococcus aureus, staphylo means a bunch of grapes. Coccus tells you it's a round cell, and aureus is just Latin for golden. So the name literally tells you it's a round bug that grows in clusters like grapes and looks golden. How cool is that? The clues are right in the name.
And that brings us to shape, which is a huge deal for identifying bacteria. Besides the round ones, the cocci that we just talked about, you've also got rod-shaped bacteria called bacilli, little corkscrew-shaped ones called spirochetes, and some that look like curved rods called vibrios. It's one of the first things a microbiologist looks for.
Okay, now we are getting to one of the most important, most fundamental techniques in all of microbiology.
It's a simple little staining test that splits almost the entire bacterial kingdom right down the middle, into two massive groups. Let's talk about the great gram stain divide.
And you know what? It really is this simple. After you do the staining procedure, you look under the microscope and the bacteria are either blue or purple, we call those gram-positive, or they're red or pink, we call those gram-negative. So, why? What does the color tell us about the bug?
The whole secret is in their cell wall and how they're built. The gram-positive bacteria, the blue ones, they have a really thick outer wall made of this stuff called peptidoglycan. The gram-negative bacteria, on the other hand, have just a thin layer of it. But, and this is the absolute key difference, they have a whole extra layer on top of that called an outer membrane. This outer membrane is a total game changer. It's like having a tough, selective bodyguard at the door, controlling everything that tries to get in or out. This extra layer of armor is a big reason why gram-negative bacteria can be so much harder to kill with certain antibiotics. The medicine just can't get past the gate. But that's not all. Embedded inside that special outer membrane is a molecule that gram-positive bacteria just don't have. It's something called endotoxin. So, okay, we're talking about a tiny structural detail in the wall of a microscopic cell. Why should we care? In the real world, what is the big deal about this endotoxin?
Here's why it matters. When one of these gram-negative bacteria dies and breaks apart inside our bodies, that endotoxin gets released and our immune system goes absolutely haywire. That miserable feeling when you're sick, the fever, the aches, the weakness, a lot of that is actually your body's intense reaction to this endotoxin. In really bad cases, it can even cause a dangerous condition known as shock. All of that from one tiny molecule in the wall of a single cell.
And that right there just shows you the power of microbiology. A simple color test, blue versus red, reveals a massive structural difference that has huge consequences for our health. It really makes you wonder, if one simple stain can tell us all that, what other incredible secrets is this invisible world just waiting to show us?